And you can see here a very mottled effect. The white is underneath, and what I've done is laid down puddles of color into a very wet surface, similar to what we did when we did the cave painting. I'm using somewhat similar technique, but this time I'm using it as a second application. And we're going to do this throughout to create a really wonderful mottled effect on the background and watch it play up against the ridges of the white. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and I'm going to hold my canvas at an angle so that you can see what I'm doing as I try and get a close-up. What we need to do is wet the surface really well first, and once the surface is very wet, then we're going to add to that surface some pigment. So for my mix, I'm going to put a fair amount of water down on my palette, and I'm just going to use a tiny little bit of water that has a little bit of green in it, just so you can see what's happening right here on the palette. And I'm just working right on my wax palette. I'm going to pick up some phthalo green, and I'm going to allow that to mix with my water, almost like a watercolor. This is going to appear very watery at first, but you're going to see what I'm going to do. I'll use this as a little bit of a reservoir initially. I want everything to dissolve right into that. But I'm going to pick up my phthalo green and put it over here. And I'm going to pick up some phthalo blue right next to it. And I'm going to mix these two together to create a very deep aqua color. It's a blue-green. I'm going to take some of this and put it over here. So I've got 3 puddles now. And into this, I'm going to put some of the quinacridone gold. And that's going to tone my green and make it quite a rich, dark green. Now, for those of you who do not have the quinacridone gold, you can use just a touch of naphthol red light. It will not give you the exact same color, but something similar. And what this is doing is deepening my green. When I say deepening it, it is actually making it just a richer, warmer green as opposed to a blue-green. So what I've got here in front of me is a very cool and a very warm green relative to each other. Again, I'll tell you what those mixes are, and you'll see them come up on the screen. So if you have a note paper and pencil, the first mix I used here was phthalo green and a little bit of phthalo blue, about 50-50, and they're mixed together for the first puddle. The second puddle was some of that first puddle moved over here, and then quinacridone gold added to that. What the quinacridone gold does is help dull this green down and make it more of a duller, warmer green compared to the original blue-green. Now, I've got a little bit of the green thinned out in water here, and I can dip into that as I need water to loosen up the paint. Now I'm going to push this out of the way because I'm going to have to move fairly quickly here so you can see what I'm doing. Let's see if I can get this right in the camera shot. So I'm going to work in this area right here for now. I'm going to put my brush down out of the way, and I'm going to pick up a larger brush. Actually, I'll go for a little bit bigger one. And I'm going to pick up a fair amount of water, and I'm going to lay that water down all over this area. And it's fairly wet. You can see under the lights of the camera, you can see that it's fairly wet, all this area. We must work on a nice wet surface for the effect to have for it to have the best effect. You can see how wet that is. So now what I'm going to do is pick up my brush with my color, and I'm going to lay that color down in a puddle. And I'm going to lay it down here and there. Maybe a little bit on the edges. Don't worry about the white. We don't mind if it goes over the white. But it must go onto an area that is wet. If you put it onto the dry, it's going to stick. Now you're going to pick up your drinking straw, place one end in your mouth, and you're going to blow this color around. And you'll see it move and start to make different patterns. Now if I want it to move even more, I can drop a tiny little bit of water into the area. If it's not moving at all, it means you don't have enough water. So I'm going to put just a little more water in that area, a little more there, and I can blow. Now I can turn it around and I can blow it in different directions. What this does is form some really unusual patterns throughout the wet. And it looks almost like copper verdigris when the copper oxidizes, and the oxidation causes this green pattern on the outside. So you can have some fun with this. It doesn't take very long to dry because of course you're blowing air over the surface. So it starts to dry very quickly. And what we want to get are these mottled puddles of color happening throughout the entire design. So if you get it up onto the white areas, that's great. There's no problem with that at all. It's the variation that we're striving for. So I'm going to do another area that you can see. Pick up my large brush. Put my water down, and of course because I've got glazing medium on this whole thing, everything is going to slide over the top of it and really make some wonderful patterns. I can use either this green or I can pick up some of the blue green. Right now I'm just starting out with the darker and the duller green, not the blue green. So I'm going to put this puddle down, put some down there, and I like when it comes on fairly strong in one area and fairly weak in another. Go back and pick up some. And of course, because these are transparent, the color underneath is going to show through, and it's going to pool up against the ridges. It's also not going to obliterate the white. So we're going to see lots of color showing up underneath. So again, I'm going to place the drinking straw in my mouth, and I'm going to blow gently over the surface. Now if you find that it's puddling like this, just take a paper towel, have one handy, and just place it at the edge, and it'll just pick up the color or the excess water. You can just dip it like this. Pick it up. This one isn't moving, which is telling me it just needs a little bit more water. You can just move it around. Now don't forget to take little breaks in between, because if you keep doing this for too long, you might hyperventilate, and we don't want you passing out whilst you're doing this. But you can see, look at the wonderful and interesting pattern that is starting to form all through there. So we're going to continue doing this. I'm going to move to another location, and I can keep twisting my board as I'm doing this and moving in different directions. If you get a run like that, just pick it up with a brush, like a thirsty brush that is somewhat wet or dry. It'll pick it up right away. Now I can go back, pick up a little bit of the green, By doing this, what we're doing is actually creating not only a lot of visual texture in the background, but and making pattern, of course, but we're creating another layer, which means another transparent or glazed layer over the top. Every time we do this, we darken the greens. And this helps to give the piece a lot of depth, a lot of dimension. So you can see already, just from those 3 simple areas that we've done, how dramatic a change that is compared to what's happening up here. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the face for a little bit and show you how I'm going to do this one. Now with the face, we want to keep in mind the facial features. I'd like to sort of frame his face in a bit, so I'm going to put this wet area around the markings here on his cheeks, and I'm going to try and keep my water in that area for right now, and over here on the hands. And up into this area. This is really a fun technique, and you'll be amazed how you can use this to create patterns for other abstract works or mottled effects that you want. It's really quite enjoyable. I'm going to put just a little bit of this water into this now because it is starting to dry. I've got hot lights here in the studio, so I'm just mixing a little bit of water. Now I'm not using extender, and the reason for that is because I do want this to dry fairly quickly. So now I'm going to puddle some of this color, pull it into the circle, and I'm finding my green is looking just a tiny bit bright, so I'm just going to put a little bit of quinacridone into it. And there we go, a little more dark there. With a piece like this, almost anything goes. Just move that around just a little bit. Pick up your drinking straw. Now I can move that off. And you can blow that excess just about in any direction that you want. Of course, because the colors are so transparent, going onto the black background, we're not going to see any residual paint left behind. Now when you get a line like that, you don't want to leave it like that because that can be very distracting. So just blow it away. Starts to move and puddle. If you find that you've gotten, like here I've gotten a little bit too heavy, I'm just going to soften that because there's water in it, and water is a natural solvent of traditions. It will dissolve on its own as soon as water hits it. You can soften or move that color around if you find it just a little bit harsh. Like I find mine is just a little bit harsh, so I'm going to soften. Here, I'm just going to use my paper towel. It's a little too runny and there's hardly any pigment in that area, so I'm just going to remove that. The nice thing about this is because we've used a layer of glaze on this, if we find that we've overdone an area, you can always wet a paper towel and go in and soften it very gently and remove the paint that you've put on and start again.